Hello and welcome back, Sleepy Whatsit here with another miniatures video for you. In today's video, we're going to be doing the third video in my series on painting Greebo Games' P-Orc models. Specifically in this video, we're going to be focusing on all of the, the remaining pink-skinned models. So this is your lineman equivalents, your goblin equivalents, your blitzer equivalents, and your thrower equivalents. Previous video did the black boars and the troll. So those have been more furry models. I do have some of these special wizard and apothecary pieces that I'm going to paint at some point in the future, but I don't know when I'm going to get around to this. But this video will kind of complete your main team painting video, so that's, I think, a good place to kind of bookend this for now. As with all of my videos, I've included human-written captions with it, so if you're having any difficulties understanding anything I'm saying, feel free to turn on the captions. Unfortunately, these pink-skin P-Orcs, the recordings for these were corrupted in a similar way to what I was experiencing with my dwarf models from the previous video. So I have all of the painting sequence for the Blitzers, which I had done previously, that worked out fine. Or the rest of the positions, I don't have the in-between steps because I just didn't have usable footage for that. So I'll just have the end results. Hopefully I'll be able to clearly show what's going on, mixing the two together. And if you watched my previous video on the P-Orcs covering the boars, so the trolls and black boars, you will see a lot of replication of colors here. Unfortunately, because it is a common team, you have that duplication since I want to be complete about everything. But I do have some new stuff specific to the pink skins that hopefully will be interesting. Anyway, let's get into this. Since we're using more traditional painting techniques here, I decided to follow the inside-out rule for painting order. So the first color that we ended up painting is the actual skin tone for these P-Orcs. I wanted to go with something that was in kind of like a rosy pink, but not like a cartoonishly pink color. And as with the boars, I was trying to avoid doing like a super contrasty, over the top, more of a subtle look to the models. So I ended up using Reaper's Rosy Skin Tone Triad as the basis for my skin paint job. This involved first basing using Rosy Skin from Reaper, then creating a wash out of Rosy Shadow and applying that to all the skin tone areas, then coming back and dry brushing using Rosy Skin, and then doing final highlighting and dry brushing using Rosy Highlight. I think this worked out really well. I really like how the skin tone came out. I did experiment a little bit with trying to get a slightly deeper shadow using things like flesh tone shades or sepia shades. I didn't like how they came out, so I ended up, after results had done, I stayed with the very simple triad attack, and I'm happy with the results I got. After completing the skin tone, the next area I tackled was painting all of the green armor on the models. So this followed the same basic procedure that I did with the boar models. So I based out using Cat's Eye Green from Reaper. Then I created a wash out of Naga Green from Reaper and applied that everywhere. After that dried, I did a dry brush using Cat's Eye Green from Reaper. And then I followed that up by doing a sequence of dry brushing Dungeon Slime from Reaper, and then quickly following that up with a little bit of dry brushing using Cat's Eye Green. So this would be doing your second and third dry brushing close enough together that it hasn't fully dried, so you have, I guess, something that you might call a dry blend going on. This is because, in general, I found the Dungeon Slime on its own, dry brushed on, over-highlighted, and I didn't like exactly how it looked, but when it kind of blended in with the Cat's Eye Green, it looked very nice. So this is something I kind of accidentally originally did with the boars, but I decided to continue that technique through for the whole team, so I got a uniform kind of armor color going on. Following the completion of the green armor sections, the next color I worked on was the detailed white bits that appear on the armor. So I attempted to avoid replicating some of the mistakes that I made with the boar armor, specifically trying to wash this using Nuln Oil. I unfortunately, though, had to live with some of the other mistakes that I had made, like making it a little bit overly white, so this is not necessarily the optimal way to do it, but this is the way that mixes the best with my previous efforts on the rest of the team. So I based out using Misty Gray by Reaper. Then I did some layer painting using Off-White by Vallejo. And then I did a final highlighting and layer painting using pure white by Reaper. I attempted to restrict as much of the pure white I did this time, but to a certain extent I had to do it to keep the same level of brightness going on, but I got a bit of a better hang on this. Personally, if I was going to redo this from scratch, I probably would drop the pure white and find a tone in between Misty Gray and Off-White potentially to work with. With all of the armor painted, the next step was to do the detailed gray metal areas, so would be the equivalent of, I guess, steel, though I wasn't using a true metallic paints here because I wanted to take some time off from working with them because they can be a little bit finicky to work with, and I was attempting to avoid doing something like a true non-metallic with a super contrasted look to replicate a realistic metal. I was going with something that's a little bit more of an artistic or painterly color here, so I based out using Cold Gray by Vallejo, and then I did some layering using Light Gray from Vallejo. Basically how I did the layering is basically any part of the spikes that was facing upwards towards the source of light, if it was above, it would be covered, so you kind of like your shadow side is Cold Gray, your lit side is Light Gray. And then I went in after that had dried and did some edge and point highlighting using Misty Gray by Reaper. At this point, the majority of the models are painted, so the next kind of broad step would be doing all the detail painting. So anything that was leathery got based out using Harvest Brown by Reaper. All of the claws on the models got based out using Faded Khaki by Reaper, and all the teeth got based out using Desert Sand. And then for the majority of those, I went back in and did a wash using Sepia Shade from Vallejo to give them a little bit more depth and shadowing to them, but I didn't go and do any additional highlighting since they're all meant to be kind of like background details. The tongue on the gobbo is just heartthrob pink glazed over the base shading. And then the apples are done using Brilliant Red, I believe, from Reaper, and just shaded over that. My notes weren't clear on exactly what I did there. It may have been Helioadric Red also, but it's just basically a brighter red shade uses a glaze over top of an undershade. The final step of painting these models involved painting all the grass that had been done on the textured base. So this was based out using Turf Green by Reaper, which is a little bit of a thinner or less pigmented paint, so requires a couple layers to get it completely on there. Then I made a wash out of Ancient Oak by Reaper and applied that to get our shadows. Drybrushed it up using Turf Green to get some of the brightness back, and then did the final highlighting using a dry brushing of Jade Green by Reaper everywhere. At this point, I have basically a usable orc team between the models that I painted in this video and the models I painted in the previous video. I will concede I haven't actually painted all of the line orcs and goblins because I'm not using them actively right now, and I haven't gone around to painting the wizard or apothecary. I really enjoyed this team. I like the look, I like the aesthetic. I think they're relatively straight ahead and easy to paint, so they're very nice that way. There is a lot of models in them, so if you are looking at approaching this project, you may want to look at kind of breaking it down. I'm going to do 4 models this week, 4 models the next week, 4 models, and even doing it that way, you're going to end up, it's going to take you 6 weeks to do, because I think I have something like 23 models to paint, so it is a bit of a big project. I found it a bit samey, as you can maybe tell because of the release schedule between this and traveling for work and things like that. I definitely lost a bit of steam on this, so that's why I'm not going to be doing the apothecary and wizard immediately, but I do want to come back to those because those are unique models, but I kind of want to paint some other things before coming back to those. Anyway, I hope you found this video informative. If you did, please give the video a like. If you want to see more content like this, please subscribe to the channel. I release new content every week, sometimes on Mondays. And other than that, I look forward to seeing you in the next video.